Bye, people. What are the biggest differences between having a relationship with a man and with a woman? Story 1. With most of the women I dated, gifts/acts of kindness were an everyday thing. Like I'd make an extra stop for something they liked and it wouldn't be a big deal to them. Every single guy I have dated and have lost their minds over the little things. When my husband and I first started dating, I stopped and got him a slushie while I got gas. Not even an extra stop. I just set it in front of him at his apartment, and you'd have thought it was the holy grail. When my wife was my girlfriend, she worked at Edible Arrangements. When she comes over to my place after work, she brings me free bags of fresh fruit and smoothies. My girlfriend came with smoothies. I mean, come on. My girlfriend came with smoothies. Thank you for the tip. I'll have to give it a try. Instructions unclear. D stuck in a blender. Story 2. Bye, woman here. My relationships with women have always been more emotionally rewarding, as the girls I've known tend to be more open about their emotions, so I'm not left guessing where we are at. Only drawback is homophobic people judging the relationship. My relationships with guys have been less deep, sadly, even though I've tried. It feels like trying to squeeze blood out of a stone, trying to get the guys I've known to just be direct about what they want, leading me to think I have better luck and happiness with other women rather than men, even though I find them just as attractive as women. I'm also not a fan of gender roles and feel far more pressured dating a guy to be submissive and passive, and I'm neither of those things. It's a bummer. It makes me realize why so many people, even bi people, think dating people of their own gender is just easier. I once asked my straight friend about his relationship, and I took his advice to heart. He also asked me about being gay. I am bi but identify as gay. Here is the summary of our response. In my hetero relationship, my wife is all the things I am not. She's sensitive, deep, thoughtful, loving, caring, and completes me in a way I can't complete myself. My response, my boyfriends amplify my weak areas, making me stronger, picking me up when I need it, and are great at getting me to push myself in my career, life, and overall goals. We are friends and lovers and are more direct about our feelings and desires. I thought both were amazing because one is about the opposite and one is about the same, just more. One is about filling in the gaps in personality, the other about amplifying what's already there. That's great, but sadly, hetero relationships aren't that simple with everyone. I wish they were. It would be nice if women all had these negative and positive traits and their male partners had the opposites to complete and enrich them, but I haven't personally experienced that in my relationships with men. It's been the opposite. I've had more experience with male partners who think if I'm strong in a particular area, then there's no need for them to better themselves in that area because they have me for that, i.e. organization and future planning. I much prefer being with someone who doesn't make me feel like I'm babysitting them or in a dependent relationship, and sadly, all the male-female relationships I've had feel that way. The female-female ones have just been that much simpler. Everything has felt more equal. Maybe it will change one day, though. I would like it to. Alrighty, folks. Mainly Facts Guy here. Just letting you know, if you don't already, that I am indeed pan. I don't know, half-sibling to my bi brethren. Or the same thing if you ask some folks. I don't know, not the video to figure that out. But I've dated both men and women, and here's what I found. All people are different, and different people need different things. I've had a lot of experiences the exact opposite as what were in this story, and some that were the same. Everyone is different, and while there might be some truth to generalizations, they are just that. Generally true if applied to a group as a whole, but pretty unreliable when applied to an individual. Story 3. From my experience at least, women-women relationships tend to move faster. I can't explain it. Like, when I was with my ex, we were so ride or die from day one, saying I love you after less than a month together. Very intense overall. Also, unfortunately, sometimes you get to realize how much bias and prejudice your friends and family might secretly hold. With men, I never had something like that. There was a lot more downtime, I guess. Also, no fear about having to go out while holding hands or introducing to the family. Although, aside from a few things, I think it's very different overall because people are different, you know? Like, my ex was very extroverted and my boyfriend is very introverted, so the dynamic changes because of that too. Isn't it a stereotype that two women who are in a relationship move in together almost right away? Yup, U-Haul lesbians. Apologies if this is a negative term for anyone in my LGBTQ community. People will self-reference this way and find the stereotype funny. What do lesbians do on their second date? They rent a U-Haul. I actually have a problem finding women to talk to because they move way too quickly. I move slowly no matter who I'm with, and every woman I've started to date has tried to demand we immediately start a serious committed relationship despite a lot of them being married with children at the time. I'm expected to let them have a relationship with a guy and have a family and a totally separate life, but I have to just sit around at home and wait on them and answer every single text within minutes. Man, rural areas are BS. Story 4. My girlfriend walks around naked more than my ex-boyfriend. Most guys feel awkward having their parts dangling in the breeze, even if it's with someone who has seen them before. Right? Been with my husband for 10 years, he still cups his junk whenever he's naked. Meanwhile, mine likes to randomly enter the room and windmill his D to me. Story 5. Just off the top of my head, and noting that everyone is different, there's far more variation between people than between genders, I'm an assertive person by nature, and I tend to take charge. When I'm changing a tire and my boyfriend is standing off to the side, we get weird looks. No one blinks if my girlfriend is standing there. Women do more housework without being asked. You have to task manage guys more. My current boyfriend is not like this at all, fortunately. Women are more cautious about personal safety. A lot of them, e.g., won't go on walks alone in the dark. I'm a taller woman, 5'8", 172 centimeters, and I've done a lot of solo travel, so I'm a lot less cautious than my girlfriends, and sometimes I have to remind myself to be more mindful of their concerns. Even tomboyish women have more elaborate grooming routines compared to most guys. I've had to talk numerous boyfriends out of 3-in-1 body wash, shampoo, conditioner. Women tend to smell really nice, but honestly, people of all genders are gross, clean, messy, kinky, loud, absent-minded, annoying, brilliant, and lovable. You are a hero from saving those poor things from the clutches of 3-in-1s. Yeah, guys, I've said it in videos before and I'll say it again. Good grooming isn't that hard, and it all starts with ditching the 3-in-1 crap. Trust me, find a good shampoo, a good conditioner, and a variety of body washes or soaps that are scents your partner really likes. You buy multiples so they don't get too used to just one, so you can mix it up and get that, ooh, you smell nice compliments every so often. Story 6. This is just my personal experience. It may just be the guys I've dated, but I've always wondered if other bi women have experienced this. It's hard to put into words. Dating straight men as a woman, in my experience, means somehow so much more of the domestic labor. Organizing, cleaning, cooking, etc., and emotional labor like initiating communication on issues, caring for day-to-day health and safety, that kind of stuff. It just seems to fall to you, the woman, or is just expected of you to do more, despite your conversations and communication with the man. In my experience, because of their gender, most men just miss an education on or awareness of these things in the way that women get it. Oftentimes, you have to teach a man these things. With women, it's so much more of an equal partnership and way less need to convince them to work equally with you. In the end, in my personal experience, the men I've dated are more emotional labor and just plain more labor. Story 7. Honestly, I feel like the smaller things are much more interesting here, like who wants to cuddle more and how cuddling feels with people of different genders. Who do you feel more safe with, physically and emotionally? What are the small things that happen and that they do occasionally or in their day-to-day life? How do their gestures of love differ? How do they express their love? How does intercourse feel like for the different genders? Which one's more fun? Which one feels like they've got more to offer for you personally? Who gives better massages? Do they feel different? What chores do they prefer? Which useful skills do they display? How do they act around friends? How easily do they get jealous? It's all highly subjective, of course, but there's so much interesting stuff to dig into. These answers here so far seem kinda shallow, trying to find the one biggest difference. The details are what make it interesting. Honestly, I think the reason OP isn't seeing the answers to these kinds of things is because when you get down to those, there is just way more variety between individuals. I don't know, that's just my thinking. Story 8. The biggest gender-based difference I've experienced is how other people treat your relationship. Yeah, this. Hetero can walk around all day holding hands, occasional kisses, no big deal. Same gender and even holding hands is suddenly an invite for catcalls, verbal abuse, and the always terrifying shouts out moving cars. Social expectations are totally different. Hetero and people can't help but ask about weddings and kids before they even know you. Homo, and it's probably a phase, practically no recognition that your partner is even significant to you. That's changing, though, getting better bit by bit, in my opinion. Homo, and it's probably a phase, practically no recognition that your partner is even significant to you. This is so true. When my straight friends enter a relationship, everyone is like, oh wow, you gonna move in? Gonna get married? Can you imagine what your kids look like? Meanwhile, when I'm in a relationship, it's treated like a quirky story. Careful what you wish for, but I completely understand. My sister is lesbian, and her relationships are treated completely differently to mine in exactly the same way you've experienced. Although a part of it is definitely the culture of where we live, and it's getting better over the years for sure. Story 9. As a man, men who've only dated women before are really easy to impress. I bought my ex dinner a few times, and he just about lost his mind because no one had done that for him before. I've heard lesbians say the same thing about women, so I think it's more of a societal expectation thing than anything else. The whole dinner debate still just blows my entire mind. Me and my boyfriend just switch off if we can remember who paid last. We don't go out that often. And it makes it all so much easier to deal with. Nobody really pays more than the other, and there isn't some big to-do about who's supposed to buy. My partner and I just have an unspoken whoever picks the place pays rule. It works out pretty well. Hey babe, want to go out for dinner tonight? Sure, where you want to go? Up to you, anywhere you want. Oh, okay, cool. Hey, wait a minute. I've got to tell you, it is nice to get to the point in a relationship where you just have a joint checking account, and then it's not who's paying, but more of a, should we really eat out again? Story 10. I don't know, I've been by myself my entire life. Don't worry, you're just on standby. Just who came up with these arbitrary puns? Oof, really stretching the word arbitrary just to get out a third-rate pun, huh? You couldn't just bide your time and wait for a better chance to use it? Story 11. I could share clothes with my girlfriend, but now I just steal my male fiancé's clothes. I cannot tell you how elated I was when I opened up my new boyfriend's closet and found it filled with flannels. I felt so at home. I bought my wife men's sweatpants for Christmas one year, and at first she was upset that I got her big men's sweatpants. Then she wore them, and they are now her favorite because they're so comfy. And they have deep pockets. Please like and subscribe if you've made it this far. I hope you'll enjoy the rest of the video and have a wonderful day. Story 12. You know the U-Haul lesbian thing? Totally true. I get so close so fast with other women, while for men it took me 3 years to get my now husband warmed up to the idea of marriage. With my ex-girlfriend before him, she was ready to settle down and get married after like 2 months. Otherwise, I'd say I actually do prefer relationships with women, but they can get more intense than relationships I've had with men. But that's not always a good thing. You know the U-Haul lesbian thing? No, I do not. What is the U-Haul lesbian thing? The common joke is, what do lesbians do on the first date? A haul. Making fun of the fact that lesbians often jump into committed. Second date, the joke is they bring a moving truck on the second date. Story 13. I'm a bi dude. Men, more straightforward, less drama, less head games. Can be really nice, but also not as exciting. Women, less straightforward, more drama, but much bigger emotional payoffs when things work out. Painting with an extremely broad brush here, after having dated several people of both genders. I've had drama-y guys and straightforward girls as well. Some bi people think that being with your own gender tends to be more enjoyable intimately because they know what to do already. But I found that being with the opposite gender is just as enjoyable, with communication and a modicum of practice. I ended up marrying a woman. I'm a bi woman, and I can thoroughly second this. What do you mean by bigger emotional payoff? As a dude who dates other dudes, a lot of dudes aren't emotionally there. I found my female friends to be more empathetic than the guys I was trying to have relationships with, LOL. Do we think that maybe it isn't the gender of the person that might determine a lot of these factors, but just the types of person you are attracted to, and maybe you're attracted to different things in different genders and don't seek out relationships outside of those qualities you've grown to seek out? Good lord, that is one hell of a confusing run-on sentence. I should really go back and redo that in a more coherent way. But I won't. Story 14. If I'm with a guy, I can hold hands with him and people will assume he's my boyfriend. If I'm with a woman, I can hold hands with her and people will assume she's my sister. Bonus points for a guy asking if he can join in whenever you introduce a woman as your girlfriend. Met this bi girl in college who told me about how a guy we both were acquainted with said, "That's kinda hot, guys like that," when she told him she was bi. We referred to him as guys like that for the rest of the year, when he wasn't in earshot. Like, dude, it's her preference. It's not about whether or not guys like it, LOL. This is the reason I refuse to go to straight clubs. I can't dance with my girlfriend without some dude trying to get between her and I to join. Guys, I know there are instances where two women are happy to have a guy join. That happens. Do you want to know who they probably almost never want to join? A guy who asks, "Can I join?" or says, "That's hot, guys like that." If they want a third, it'll probably be with someone who doesn't come off like that. Story 15. As a bi girl, the biggest difference is women are usually more emotionally invested but dramatic. Guys are usually laid back and fun but not as involved. Can you expand on what you mean by involved? Honestly curious. Well, from my personal experience with guys, it's usually more physical or romantically involved than emotionally. It's probably due to the stereotypes that guys shouldn't be emotional, or is just my experience. I'm sure some guys are emotionally great though, you know? Some guys are just less emotional, and that's not inherently a bad thing. It's true there are those who need to pretend so they seem more resilient, but honestly, for some of us, it's nothing to do with what we are taught to believe or forced to act. We're just less burdened by emotions than others. My ex-girlfriend used to assume I'm repressing feelings and emotion just because I don't feel the same way as her about certain things. To have someone feel sorry for you when you're not even feeling sorry for yourself is frustrating and felt condescending to me, regardless of how genuine she was being about it. Story 16. I've dated more women than men, but both of the guys were way easier and more direct than any of the women were. Intercourse with a guy is easier to get started. Literally, you can be playing video games on the couch and suddenly you're both horny and going for it. Women need more prep time generally. It's almost never 0 to 100 in a flash. It's slower to get started and longer to reach the finish, but in my opinion, it's more satisfying when you both get there. Culturally, it is easier to date women as it isn't immediately seen as taboo by most people. Almost nobody will bat an eye if you kiss as hetero in public, but you'll get a look or two if you're the same gender. These have been my experiences, and in no way do I think it is universal, just the folks that have been nice enough to date me. Oh my god, yes, I'm great at flirting with women, but terrible at keeping romantic relationships with them, and female. Because after the initial intimate times, I'm so shy about reinitiating, it tends to just settle back into a close, flirty friendship pattern. Whereas with men, I can just start sending signals and they help hit the gas. Story 17. I would love to know, but I'm a bi that's never dated anyone before. Relatable. We cast the widest net, but still failed. And yet everyone still fears that you're going to date them, even though you've never dated anyone and probably never will. Now that isn't the mindset to have. Granted, putting yourself out there, meeting people, getting a date, none of that is the easiest, and it risks getting hurt. It isn't fun, and it might take years. But folks, if you feel like there is no one out there for you, there is. But you're going to make it a lot harder to find them when you've convinced yourself not to look. But also, there's nothing wrong with being single. Story 18. I'm a small human, and when I date women, they're mostly my size, but men are usually at least 6 inches taller and have 50 pounds on me. There are a lot of physical differences with cuddling and intimacy with partners of different sizes. I love that men can pick me up when I want them to, and that I get to feel tiny and safe with men I trust. With women, it's more equal, so we switch back and forth between being the cuddler and the cuddlee. Also, with women, we usually take turns getting attention and orgasming during intercourse, whereas with men, it's more likely to be just one effort. Neither men nor women can get me off, though. That I have to do myself. Dr. Ruth, the intercourse doc, has some good books about teaching someone you are with how to pleasure you, and also about not masturbating for a while so you become sensitive to someone else. Story 19. I think the experience is going to be much different for a bi dude as opposed to a bi chick. Straight girls wouldn't date me because they thought I'd leave them for a guy. Gay guys wouldn't date me because they thought I'd leave them for a girl. Took too long to scroll down for this. Some of us gay guys aren't intimidated by that kind of stuff. Be out and proud as bi. Let people sort themselves out of your dating pool. As pan, I've come across a few people that either didn't like that I was pan or that thought I was just avoiding calling myself gay or straight. And in my mind, I was like, ooh, thank you for so quickly helping me realize that I'm not interested in you. Story 20. There are more differences between people of the same gender than between genders, in my opinion. I've had relationships with men, women, and people somewhere in between, and I think there aren't huge differences between men and women like most assume. That being said, the majority of people I've dated have been queer in some way, so I don't know if that changes things. Story 21. To me, girls always tend to just be softer and smell nicer. Story 22. I'm a bi woman, and to be honest, the biggest difference for me is other people's perception of my relationship. When I date men, I don't get the same 21 questions from strangers and family members as to why. I've made the choice to date that person. Also, once when I was dating a woman, my step-grandma asked me not to hold her hand or kiss her at Thanksgiving dinner so that it wouldn't confuse the children. They've never asked me to withhold public affection from male partners. I think I've dated more men than women long-term because it was the path of least resistance. She was an a-hole. I'm sorry. Story 23. I found men are more direct, but women show more non-intimate affection. Story 24. Men are more predictable. Those quotations removed all meaning from that sentence. I actually was using it to put emphasis. I didn't mean to say that men are predictable while women aren't, but just that men are more predictable. Quotations aren't a great way to give emphasis because they have multiple meanings. It can confuse the reader and look kinda awkward. You're better off using italics. Use an asterisk side of a word or bolding, 2 asterisks either side. More predictable, more predictable. I was so confused as to why this story about text formatting conventions ended with the words more predictable like that. I sat here thinking, I suppose using italics and bold are more predictable than quotation marks, but why would they? Oh, this story was about men being more predictable. I remember. Story 25. In my experience, there's less jealousy having a relationship with a man. When I'm with a woman, they all seem so insecure about literally everyone. I guess the guys didn't feel threatened by my female friends. Straight guy here who has dated a couple of bi women, and in my experience, the bi women were considerably less insecure than the straight women I have dated. Trying to work that into your equation now. Story 26. Being a bottom with men and wanting women to top you are two very different things. Story 27. I tend to be able to insult guys and joke around with guys more than I can with girls. Might say more about the kinds of guys and girls you're interested in than about the genders. Story 28. I'm assigned female at birth, so in general, women understand certain experiences of mine better. For example, they know what it's like to be catcalled or to be nervous alone with a man. I can just say that someone yelled at me while I was walking down the street, and my partner would probably understand why that made me nervous and wouldn't judge me for it. If I'm dating a man, I have to explain why a situation made me uncomfortable, and then he may or may not think my reaction was reasonable. Story 29. With a man, we F. With a woman, I gotta buy her crap first. Are you sure you're not effing a prostitute? Because I haven't had to buy women something to get intercourse myself. Story 30. Never had a girl break up with me for not being heterosexual enough, but have had multiple dudes break up with me for not being gay enough. Story 31. As a guy, I found I get more excited for Christmas when I date guys rather than girls because it's a mutual want and desire. You get to share most things, clothes, and video games. Women are sweeter and love little gestures more than guys. Like when I do the dishes or make supper or clean the house, they get super appreciative. Guys just brush it off or don't notice those kinds of efforts. Sometimes I read these stories and I feel like screaming. These people who tend to love those little gestures might be because of how rarely those gestures are made. Just saying, they might be more excited about your big gesture if you did the dishes every day without being asked. Story 32. Men have scratchy faces. Story 33. With a hetero relationship, there are a lot of gender-based assumptions. The dude drives and kills the bugs. The woman remembers that they're out of milk and arranges social things. It's not always true, but even then it feels like you're breaking the norm and different. With gays, there's much less expectations. Chores tend to be distributed evenly. Who kills the bugs is sometimes both or neither. Story 34. I found the women that I've been with are a lot more capable of having grown-up conversations and communicating respectfully than the men. That being said, up until my now husband, all the guys I've dated were stereotypical D-heads, and the girls were all pretty mature. Story 35. I can't borrow my boyfriend's clothes and shoes as easily. LOL. Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.